believed very much in God, prayed, read the Bible, studied new archaeological finds as they came out on the Bible and other Christian texts. But again, no belief in the divinity of Jesus, peace be upon him, no belief in a Trinity. And I basically continued in this line as an atypical Christian from 1974 until 1993. But the turning point actually started a couple years before I became a Muslim. It was 1991, and my wife and I, for several years, had been doing research on the history of the Arabian horse. And we had some Arabic documents.
What's the Arabian horse?
The Arabian horse? Well,
Yeah.
Well, it's a horse.
For people who, you know.
The Arabian horse is a horse that was bred for centuries by the Bedouins of the Middle East.
Okay.
They typically have one less vertebrae in their back and one less vertebrae in their tail than other horses, and they are the preeminent endurance horse.
Yes.
So we'd been studying the history of the Arabian horse for a number of years and been writing about it. And we had some Arabic documents, hujjas, that had accompanied a shipment of horses in 1906 to the United States. These were the Arabic testimonials